call this meeting to order. This is the ad hoc committee of the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners to discuss jail issues. The committee was created to deal with mental health issues and to coordinate criminal justice coordinating committee into the possibility of hiring a coordinator to help with jail issues and to investigate the possibility of hiring a jail consultant to help us with the construction of a new jail. For everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Sonny Wheelock, Grand Traverse County Commissioner. I've been here a while, 20 years to be exact. I served on a Blue Ribbon Jail Committee with Judge Power and 21 other individuals in 2004. We spent 15 months addressing the needs of the Grand Traverse County Jail, followed by a trip with a number of us to Colorado to the National Institute of Corrections to talk about design and needs for a jail. At some point or another, we'll get into the Blue Ribbon Jail Committee's exact findings and recommendation. Much of that process was repeated with a jail assessment that was done in 2014. Both assessments come up with, hands down, Grand Traverse County needs 250 to 300 jail beds available to them by 2020. Knowing that it's going to take 3 to 5 years to build a jail, we're already in the hole. We have 168 beds in the Grand Traverse County Jail. By Captain Rivers' assessment, we probably on a more normal day have about 162 beds that are actually available because we never had the right combination of prisoners to use every bed that we have. What we want to talk about tonight is a little bit, the Board of Commissioners assigned myself, Commissioner Tom Mayer, and Captain Todd Ritter, the jail administrator, to sit on this committee. I invited the Sheriff, Tom Bensley, and Judge Tom Power, our Chief Circuit Court Judge, to also participate in this discussion. Also here tonight we have Carol Crawford. Go ahead.
I spoke to Judge Rogers today, and he's also willing to be a part of the committee.
Retired Judge Phil Rogers was also invited to participate. I guess I'm not sure if everyone knows everybody in the room, so maybe we'll just kind of run around the corner and so everybody knows who's here, if you don't mind. Tom?
Tom Power, I'm a circuit judge, and I'm a survivor of the 2004 Blue Ribbon Committee.
It was a long haul.
Todd Ritter, I'm the jail administrator.
Joanne Blamer, Chief Population Officer for Adults with Mental Illness at London Lakes Community Mental Health.
Dean Bach, County Finance Director. Sorry, Sheriff.
Tom Bensley, Grand Traverse County Sheriff.
Sherry Wolf, Deputy Finance Director.
Greg Wolf, her spouse.
Tom Mayer, County Commissioner.
Carol Crawford, Chair of the County Commission.
Carl Kovacs, I'm the CEO of Northern Lakes Community Mental Health.
Eric Van Dusen, just a citizen at large, not a member, but.
Kyle Kaminsky, also not a member, reporter at the Record Eagle.
Chris Kramer, I work for the county board.
Nate Elger, Grand Traverse County Under Sheriff.
One more behind you.
Morgan Springer, Interlochen Public Radio.
Sorry, I wasn't sure who came in September. Okay, and we have TV 9 and 10 here also represented. So I think basically what we want to talk about tonight is where do we go from here? You know, I think we have two, I believe, immediate needs to address. One, the mental health conditions within our jail. You know, that's our immediate need that we have to address is mental health issues within our jail. I think all of us in the room easily will agree with that. And then the second piece is our physical structure. You know, our facility is outdated and needs upgrade, and this is the time to be moving forward with that. The incidents that have happened in the jail in the last year and a half kind of bring that to the highlight, which in some ways makes it a little easier for us to try to explain some of it to the general public. You know, what's going on, because those of us on the inside have known for a long time that we had some issues in the jail. You know, we're doing the best we can with what we have, but we are not going to continue to meet the long-range needs. So the two pieces is, one, I think the initial discussion has to be, what can we do to improve mental health services in the jail? You know, and Carl's here. Carl, you know, Captain Ritter might want to speak first. You know, I'm the old school guy, and Carl's heard me bitch for a long time about community mental health not meeting the mental health services in the jail. You know, the enabling agreement that was set in October of 2003 between Grand Traverse, Crawford, Grand Traverse, Leland, Almasaki, Roscommon, and Wexford counties that creates community mental health. In section 3.6 said the authority shall continue to provide upon its creation and thereafter mental health services to all county correctional facilities at no cost to the county, appropriate to the needs of the inmates and other qualified recipients, consistent with the statutory mandates. You know, and that's been my complaint for many years, and I haven't been bashful about saying that I don't think they're meeting their needs, meeting our needs. Did a little history type thing. When we talked about it at the Board of Commissioners, remember, I could not remember Art Newhouse's name. Art Newhouse and Boss were dedicated inside the Grand Traverse County Jail 40 hours a week at the time this document was signed. You know, we are now at a level which is significantly less than 80 hours a week in the jail. And, you know, that being said, whose fault it is, who's going to provide the service, that's a whole discussion that we can have. And we're certainly not going to get through all of that tonight. But we are going to have discussion about improving the mental health needs in the jail. Captain, do you want to speak to that at all? Or?
Yeah, so where we're at now with community mental health, essentially we have urgent and emergent care that are assessed every day by community mental health. We have an assigned caseworker to the jail that comes in for those inmates that are in distress, in mental health distress. And community mental health is a great partner at assessing those, finding diversions if that's appropriate, or getting them mental health treatment. Those individuals that are in jail that may not be in crisis, that have some mental health issues, that are registered clients at community mental health caseworkers still come in and see those clients. But that is a small percentage of the inmates in jail with mental illness or some type of mental health issue. There's a large portion of the mental health issue, or inmates with mental health issues, that aren't registered CMH clients, and those are the ones that they are not in crisis, that we deal with and watch deteriorate until a point where they get into crisis mode before we have an intervention point with CMH. What we're looking for is something for that to shore that gap up. The majority of the population that has mental health issues, that we don't have a service provider for. And you know, we've been talking to, we've talked to CMH several times about what we can do. The level of service since we started this process a couple years ago has increased. We now have a dedicated caseworker in the jail that is one caseworker instead of going through and kind of bringing somebody up to speed every day now. We have a stable caseworker that knows what's going on in there. But again, that's 10 hours a week. That doesn't meet our needs. We need something for those that aren't quite in distress, but incarceration is tough on people without mental illness. So you take somebody with mental illness or some type of mental health issue, and incarceration is tough on them. They start to deteriorate. And those are the folks that we got to find more help for. Correct Care Solutions is our contract medical service. We've talked to them about several options to provide or enhance the mental health services that we can provide at the jail. They've given us some options, and the options aren't cheap. They come with a hefty price tag. And some of these options have a lot of moving parts to them. And Those options make me a little nervous with a lot of moving parts, because it just leaves room for somebody to slip through the cracks, and maybe we don't have a good continuity of care, to where two of their options have a more stable approach with a single case manager, where I think we're going to get a little better continuum of care and less likely that someone will fall through the cracks or something like that. Basically, those two options, one of them would be a clinical psychologist, and the other one would be a licensed psychiatric nurse practitioner. The psychiatric nurse practitioner comes with the highest price tag, but they are able to prescribe psychotropic medications. One of the components that if we add these services that we have to be mindful of is that if we add more inmates on psychotropic medication, there's a medical follow-up and medical reviews that have to be done with those. So if we go a route where we're not enhancing part of the medical contract to cover that, that's problematic. With the nurse practitioner portion of that, not only could they prescribe the medications, but they could also help offset with the medical follow-up back end on that.
One of the things, before we went to CCS, we had Dr. Conlon on staff under contract with Grand Traverse County. She left the country for a while and she was back, and I believe she's actually under contract to CCS.
She is.
To provide service within our jail right now.
She is.
She lives out my direction, so she stopped and spent about an hour and a half talking to me the other day about some other options too. So, you know, and my comment to her was very simple. You know, bring me proposals, because we are not meeting the needs that we are right now. Let's see what we can do about making it better. Carl, do you want to add anything to that discussion at all right now at this point?
Sure, I'll make a comment or two. I think that there's probably one of the things we can agree on is that there are a lot of mental health needs in the jail. I don't think there's any doubt of that. Now, there are different levels of mental health needs. I mean, there are people who have a serious mental illness, and the recent data that I see that I've looked at shows that maybe low 20% of the people who go into the jail would be categorized as seriously mentally ill. And then you have people who are more what gets classified or called, you know, mild to moderate. So I think we have different populations that exist in the jail. I'll reiterate, I think we could probably put a lot more mental health services in the jail. The need is there. But I also, and Jody Blamer is our clinical lead who oversees our crisis services team and also the team that goes into all 6 of the jails that we provide services to. Northern Lakes is 6 counties, and we have a jail in each county, and we provide services to the jails in a similar way that we do in Grand Traverse County. So, I mean, we are prepared and willing to talk. We've tried to work as best we can with Captain Ritter and his staff when we've had emergency situations and we've had difficulties with a lot of upset inmates. We've sent in a team of staff. We've had more than one person. We've had up to 4 staff in there checking on each of the inmates, trying to look at the situation, but it's a huge task. And so all I can say is Northern Lakes continues to want to be at the table and help work at solutions. It's a continuum, because I think one of the things that I'll talk more about at some point is what's called the sequential intercept model. It's a national model that's been developed to look at different points on the continuum where mental health can intervene with corrections or the police department at various stages: prevention, all the way to dealing with someone who is in parole or probation. So there are these different intercept points, pre-booking, while somebody's in the jail, et cetera. So I would hope that we could be looking at that whole continuum, because we can put some additional services in the jail, direct care services in the jail, but I think it would be beneficial if we could look at the whole continuum, pre, post, and so forth, to try to come up with an integrated solution that'll work for our community. So we're here at the table. Joni is our clinical expert on the ground, you know, how those services work. Joni, anything you want to add that I haven't touched on?
I think you touched on it all, and I think that we work with the jail staff when needs arise, and we send in staff as appropriate in addition to the assigned staff.
So we want to be part of the solution.
Well, I think that's what this kind of, you know, I kind of wanted to do this kind of a roundtable thing with the idea of where all of us in this room and within this community have to be part of this solution. You know, Judge Power can tell you about a criminal justice expert that was here in 2004 by the name of David Bennett, who was convinced that no one should be in jail. And he and Judge Power did not quite agree on that issue, I believe. It would be a safe assessment, wouldn't it be, Tom? But the point is, I think one of the things I think we've acknowledged, and we probably need to figure out a better way to do, and I certainly don't have all the answers, or probably none of them, is we need to figure out a way to better assess these people when they're coming in the door. Because I think that's where we're missing a big piece of it, is getting that initial assessment done. You know, our officers that are bringing the people to the jail are not qualified to do those kind of assessments. Our booking officers do a great job of what they do, but that's not their job. So I think if there was one thing that we could figure out to do better to start with, at least in my mind, it's a way to assess those people immediately when they arrive, or within a very short period of time. You know, how many, you know, I've seen lists at various times about how many assessments we request, how long it takes to get those assessments, and how many of them actually get done.
Well, those assessments are a little different, so we're kind of talking about two different things. The initial assessment that we do is looking for those that are having acute problems right now. And I think we do a pretty good job with those acute assessments. It's those that are in that moderate to mild range that show us that there's some history there. But that's not a history that we're qualified to dive into to figure out to get coping mechanisms with, that are not clients of CMH that then go into a cell setting and begin to deteriorate. And we don't have a mechanism, and nobody else that I'm aware of, that gives post-booking assessments throughout the incarceration to determine how somebody is coping with those things. So we need to have something there that we offer them that say, here's a service, and remind them that here's a service if you're struggling, we have for you. Right now, we don't have that service to offer.
And exactly how we go about that service, I'm not sure any of us have the exact answer of how to do that. But I think we can assess. I think we can all agree that there is the need. You know, our particular jail contributes to that just because of the way the physical plan is and the way that our prisoners interact with each other and interact with our staff. You know, my biggest thing is we have to remember that in the county jail, the people that spend the most time there are our staff. And the environment in which they are being put in, and the demands on their ability to function grow every day. And I'm as concerned about the safety and the abilities for our staff to do their jobs as I am the prisoners, because I think we are truly at the verge on a kind of a slippery slope, whether or not we can continue to guarantee their physical and mental safety along with the prisoners. Tom, would you add something?
Yeah, the resources issue, I mean, we know we've got a number of mentally distressed people in the jail, and we, in the pre-sentence report, there is a section for everyone that comes from felony court about health background and mental health background. And so there is some assessment there. Now, it's not by a mental health professional per se, but it's usually reporting that somebody in the past has been diagnosed as bipolar or whatever it might be, anxiety, and what their prescriptions are. But if I remember, that's the problem with getting old. I remember Ann Boss and Art Newhouse coming into the jail from CMH and providing a lot of mental health service. I'm not convinced the number of mentally distressed people is different now than it was then. And the institution was closed 25 years ago or more. And my question is, if we have only 10 hours a week, if that's really the number, that doesn't begin to compare with Ann Boss and Art Newhouse. I don't know if they were full-time, but they were in the jail a lot of the time. Can CMH devote that kind of resources, go back to that level of resources that they were able to devote in the past? Because I think that would help a lot.
We'd be happy to entertain looking at that, but I think, one of the things that limits us all when it comes to either the physical health care or mental health care in the jail is related to if somebody is on Medicaid, and Medicaid is, let's say they have Medicaid, they go into the jail, the Medicaid is suspended. You can't get reimbursed for it, for the physical health care side, nor can we get reimbursed for it for the mental health side of things.
Has that changed since Ann Boss was there?
No. It used to be you'd lose it completely. So what my point I'm trying to lead to is that Northern Lakes, any of the services that we provide to the jail, the only way we can cover that is through general funds. It's not covered by Medicaid.
Is that the way it was covered when Boss and Art Newhouse were doing it?
I would imagine so, yes.
Grand Traverse County did not make an additional contribution to CMH at that time. No, our contribution has been fixed at
My point is, if we had those kind of resources,
$682,000.
at one point, we had that kind of resources, and it wasn't that long ago. I mean, Ann retired 2 years ago, and Art sometime prior to that.
More than that.
Yeah, it's more than that.
It just seemed,
unfortunately, the discussion always comes down to dollars and cents. And I think, we can all sit around and run around the table here and try to figure out how to find more dollars, but I'm not sure we have the answer to that. But I think the primary function of this group, I think, at least when we talk about mental health, is first acknowledge that we have a problem and figure out what options we have available to us to do that, or to help with that problem.
Is the public comment portion is it just a round table here?
It's a round table. If you want to make a comment,
So
go ahead.
my question is, I'm perplexed as to why there isn't a representative from Correct Care Solutions here. I'm looking at their contract right here, and on page 3, it indicates mental health care. CCS shall arrange and bear the cost of limited on-site or telemental health services for covered persons, which shall include mental health assessments, referrals, crisis intervention, and monitoring of covered persons receiving psychotropic medication to the extent able to be performed within the 2 hours per week of the psychiatrist services required to be provided by CCS. Any additional psychiatrist time shall be billed at a rate of $301.50. All mental health services provided by CCS may be performed by on-site through psychiatric means, which would require the county to have adequate internet and infrastructure for such telepsychiatry. all other mental health services, including but not limited to off-site mental health services not billed to and paid by the county directly, shall be included in the cap amount listed in paragraph 1.19. CCS, this is what I'm getting at, CCS shall work closely with Northern Lakes Community Mental Health regarding mental health care for each covered person. And that was paragraph 1.11 of the contract. And then if you go down to 1.15.3, it indicates psychotropic and mental health medications. It says CCS shall arrange and bear the cost of psychotropic and mental health medications for covered persons. I'm wondering if anyone is performing or has considered performing and conducting a performance audit of CCS to determine whether or not they're meeting the requirements of their contract. First of all, are they coordinating properly with Northern Lakes Community Mental Health when someone is taken off suicide watch and Community Mental Health determines that they should be thrown in an isolation cell, and that's what they write on a form. And then is there any follow-up care as required by the National Commission on Correctional Health Care's minimum standards for healthcare services in jails, which requires when someone's taken off of suicide watch to progressive step down. And I don't see any evidence of that occurring in follow-up assessments after Northern Lakes Community Mental Health takes people off suicide watch. So does anyone have an answer to that?
I'm not sure what your specific question was to answer. If you'd like me to explain.
Is there coordination between Correct Care Solutions and their psychiatrist that spends at maximum 2 hours a week in the jail and Community Mental Health with regards to follow-up care for acute suicidal inmates?
Yep, so the way the system is designed and works through their contract is that 2 hours a week with a psychiatrist are used for those that come in crisis that are not registered consumers of CMH. CMH treats them to get them through their crisis. They are then referred to Dr. Conlon, who's the psychiatrist under the contract through CCS, and she continues the continuum of care and follow-up. She monitors their med, does their med checkups, and there are daily communications between that psychiatrist and community mental health. They coordinate very well. The problem is the limited number of hours we have.
So how can, I guess my other question was like probably 5 parts, but the other part of the question is how can community mental health come in and write on a piece of paper that someone needs to be isolated, and then the jail staff follows that advice from that medical professional, and they're put in an isolation cell, which is way below the standard of care for someone with mental illness. To be isolated, that's the worst thing in the world for them. And in 2014, the jail experts that came, and you were sitting in that PowerPoint presentation when they told you that, how does that occur with follow-up care from CCS employees coming in and seeing that they're still in isolation? How does that continue? I don't understand that.
Well, I believe what you're talking about is specific to an ongoing lawsuit that I don't think I'm prepared to discuss or answer without the county's representation vetting that.
It may be fact specific, but I'm generally inquiring about hypothetically, this isn't the only time this has occurred, I'm certain. So when mentally ill inmates are housed in an isolation cell, how can your mental health professionals continue to allow that to occur?
We can't speak for the mental health professional.
You're correct.
What we can say is there are different types of cells that you should probably be familiar with if you're not. Isolation cells are assigned for a myriad of reasons. Just them releasing a person who is freed of suicide watch and stuck into an isolation cell is a mischaracterization of what occurs. Isolation cells are there for a purpose, for a lot of purposes. Disciplinary segregation, medical issues, mental health issues. That doesn't mean that they are in a 24/7 observation cell. They're in an isolation cell. There's reason for that.
But that is the worst thing in the world for mentally
That's according to you.
ill
That's
inmates.
according to
That's
you.
according to the experts and from 2014 that came and presented a PowerPoint to all of you.
Tom?
Well, your first question was, why isn't CCS here? And that's a good idea, just to make sure that they're getting the notices of the meetings. Maybe they already are, but just to, that they should. Yeah.
Because this is the
Yeah.
first meeting of the ad hoc committee, we just trying to, I just try to want to invite in a few people and do a little roundtable discussion, and we'll try to come up with some sort of a fixed agenda, what we want to move to next, and
Yeah.
who we need to bring to the table.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, because that's how he started.
Yeah.
And then later on, in future meetings, I'd like to know about the specific training that the workers who are making any kind of assessments are getting, like on an annual basis, and that they're also receiving some kind of training that includes, prisoner populations, whether it be like a state prisoner or a county prisoner, county inmate. I'd just like to know what that training is, and if we need to make sure that, like in our contract with CCS, that we agree with the training that they're getting. That would be an important point for me to see in the contract.
We've made that request to CCS. They're getting us their training records. They also provide training to our staff as well.
I think what we're coming out of tonight's meeting is first the realization that we are not meeting the mental health needs within our jail. I don't think any of us would deny that. So let's try to identify who the stakeholders are to try to improve that. And I think that was the idea of this organizational meeting, was try to deal with that. I think from the discussions here tonight, we between 3 or 4, half a dozen of us, we can put together a list of people that need to come back to the next meeting. I'd like to hear from Dr. Conlon. She is the contracted psychiatrist in the jail 2 hours a week, and I think she will easily acknowledge that we're not meeting the needs. So let's talk about, okay, we're not meeting the needs, but what can we do better? I think that's the big piece, is what can we do better? Judge Power only needs to know that we have a cell available when someone needs to go to the jail.
Well, yeah. We want things to be done right too. And you got people who are jail officers in a crowded facility, and they're asked to deal with people who are, well, if 20% is the right number, seriously mentally ill, and a number of others, and society has foisted a problem on them that's not fair for them to be the ones responsible for. Now, I say again, in the past, in the not very distant past, there were 2 people who were devoted from CMH to taking care of problems in the jail. And now, we're down to, if 10 hours is the right number, we're down to 10 hours. Now, there are reimbursement limitations, but has something changed that makes that impossible to have the same kind of resources we had a few years ago? I don't think the number of mentally ill people in the jail is significantly different, to be honest with you. I think the problems are there because there really is the treatment and medication and evaluations are, you can't in 10 hours do what Ann Boss and Art Newhouse, who were highly respected by everybody who dealt with them, what they did in either half-time or full-time.
And I don't want to take anything away from Joe Barkman, who comes in now and saying he's not doing a wonderful job for us, and not pointing fingers and saying that CMH isn't working with us, because that's absolutely not the case. And there are times, specifically when we've had incidents where we see an outpour of support from them with additional staff to get through a crisis mode, which has been fantastic. But the average is about now 2 hours a day, where many years ago it was, we had somebody there pretty much full-time, and then another body on top of that. So the level of service that we received is significantly less. That's what we're looking for, this difference.
When we talk about the CMH service, the annual reports and all those kind of things, we all acknowledge the amount of mental health services that are provided in our community. I think the purpose for this group is to talk specifically about how we make it better in the jail. And I think we can run around the table a dozen more times, and we're still going to come up with the idea that we are not meeting the mental health needs in our jail
So let's see if we can put our heads together and figure out ways to make that better. Okay, agreed. Anybody else have anything to add in that regard?
I don't know if it'll fit in later or not, but the last incident caused me to wonder, about the employees as well. There's two groups of people working in the jail. There's the inmates that are there, and then there's the people who are working to make sure the inmates are safe. And I just want to make sure that we're taking into consideration the work environment at the same time. And if there's things that we can do to make it better, that might also help us with our hiring practices. We may have more applicants as well.
Well, the conditions that affect the inmates are directly affecting the officers as well. They essentially spend more time there, many of them, than they do at home. If you look at the overtime that most of them work. So, we watch them very closely. We communicate with them. We've had offered some of them services beyond some normal conversations after dealing with some of these incidents, because they do hit staff hard. They take all of this very seriously, and it affects them very deeply when something happens.
Yeah.
So that's something we continue to work on every day.
Well, I understand clearly that no one just goes through this unscathed, that it affects everyone, and I'm very concerned about that.
Yeah, I think we are. We're making sure that we are securing the safety of not only our prisoners, but our staff. And, both physically and mentally. So, all right, I think we all kind of have a little bit of pecking order. We'll sit together and we'll try to come up with some ideas of ways that we can do that. We'll probably schedule another meeting in a couple, 3 weeks where we can come back and talk specifically about what we do to improve, at least on a short-term basis, the mental health services provided within the jail.
Is there a timeline to when we have to respond to contract issues?
The CCS contract
The renewal is in 30 now.
It's an addendum for the renewal, right? Because there's a CPI increase in it. But the contract goes through February 19th. Yeah.
We've got another
February
year.
when? 19?
19th, sir.
So we have another year on the contract with CCS.
Correct.
So, but, that being said, that contract can be amended at any point if we figure out there's a better way for us to provide the services that we need.
Correct.
And I think that's the important piece. Is identify what services we need and how we do it better.
I don't know if I'll be back for future sessions, so I'd like to just mention too, one of the things that we could do, we talked about better assessing at the door and also some post-booking assessments during an inmate's stay. We did not talk about a discharge planner, which I know can seem like a foreign concept in some ways, because you're in jail, you're property of the jail, and then suddenly you're not. But if someone's been in jail for 30 days, they're less likely to have a job, they're less likely to have a place to stay, they're less likely to have people that support them. So if we could find a way to work on that as well, as they're approaching their discharge date, maybe we could have the opportunity to rebuild some of those bridges.
Yeah, we've started working with a group called BDAI, before, during, and after incarceration. And they have a couple of former jail chaplains that we're working with that are doing post-release referral programming with. But it is a volunteer-based program, so when the volunteers are available, we have them to do it. When they're not, we don't. So it is a program we'd like to expand and work on, because it is important for the continuity of care for somebody getting out to follow up and hopefully continue with the progress that we're making with mental health treatment, not just turning around and coming back in.
And reducing recidivism.
Exactly.
I have a question about whether or not, how many people in this room are even aware of this minimum standards for health services in jail. I'm looking at the one from 2014, it's the most updated one. And the minimum standards in a jail suicide require what's called a psychological autopsy to be performed. and it's a reconstruction post-mortem. It's a written reconstruction of an individual's life with an emphasis on factors that led up to and may have contributed to the individual's death. It is usually conducted by a psychologist or other qualified mental health professional. And then I'm going to the Correct Care Solutions Policy and Procedures Manual. And this is not the Grand Traverse County version, but it's basically their nationwide policy and procedures that I found. And it requires, this is a patient death policy that they have, and it indicates that if a death was by suicide, the mental health director causes the psychological autopsy to be completed and submits to Home Office Chief of Behavioral Health at least 7 days prior to a mortality review. So there's a mortality review and a psychological autopsy. And I've seen zero evidence that a psychological autopsy has been conducted in either of the most recent suicides. I'm just wondering if one has been conducted and what the results of that were, and if that's being taken into consideration when you're trying to determine how to move forward here.
CCS does do their own investigation, which is based around the medical and mental health treatment of the inmate to include cause of death. Those are completed. Usually they take a while. I know one was completed in the first suicide we had. I do not believe the second one is completed yet. I know they were still pulling information for it as recent as about a week ago.
But none of the family members have been contacted, and that's part of the psychological autopsy and any type of protocol I've been looking into. And I'm wondering how you can successfully conduct a psychological autopsy with no contact with any of the family members.
Well, that's what you're looking into. It's not what their guidelines for theirs are.
I think that is beyond the scope of the ad hoc committee's responsibility at this point. I think our responsibility is to try to figure out ways to not tell them how to do their job, but to make sure that we're providing as best service we can. So I think I'd like to move forward off from this part, and if anyone has better ideas, better just say them. Anybody has better ideas of how we increase mental health services within the jail, and some sort of a proposal to do that, I'm certainly willing to look at that. Sheriff, you wanted to make a
Yes, a couple comments. I would caution any of the county employees on their comments. I know Mr. Van Dusen is here, trying to maybe feather his cap for a lawsuit in some respects. So we need to be careful of what we say. I think some of his questions and comments have led in that direction. Number two, CMH, as far as we know, are the experts. I would like to see, a timeline on when we have options for a solution. 3 weeks. CMH come up with a plan and a cost of how you can better the services, meet the needs of those people who are falling in the gaps. Okay? We're working with correct. We're working.
Will attempted, but
okay.
Finish, and then you.
Okay. Okay.
I thought he was asking me a question.
No. We would like to see some kind of proposal for CMH. You understand the situation. What can CMH do to, quote, fix the problem? We're working with our healthcare provider, trying to find a solution. And I think that, if we study this and if we talk about it long enough, they'll have 8th Street fixed, okay? And that's not going to happen overnight. So I think there needs to be a timeline in that, okay, in 3 weeks, we're going to have option A, B, or C. We need to move forward, 1 foot in front of the other. So we've been working with Correct Care Solutions. CMH, is there anybody else that might be able to help get more services in the jail? Those are the ones that I'm aware of at this point.
Carl, did you want to?
Mr. Chair,
So,
I'm not in a position tonight to guarantee that there's gonna be a solution or a plan in 3 weeks. Be happy to work on it, but if you want to talk about a comprehensive plan, I'm not gonna guarantee that it's gonna happen within 3 weeks.
Well,
well, Carl, we had a conversation about a month ago, and you said you'd get your people together and start looking at this.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take whatever direction you want to get it.
you have a comment you want to?
No, I interrupted that.
It's okay.
I guess my suggestion would be that we call for the second meeting of this committee to be on the 15th of May. That's 4 weeks from tonight. And at that point, we try to solicit between now and then alternatives to additional services. You know, I'm sure Carl can try to put something together from his perspective. I know that I had asked Dr. Conlon to put together some options, and we have requested information from CCS for additional services that they could provide. So maybe by the time we meet on the 15th of May, we will have those 3 alternatives to at least look at, you know, and pick and choose. You know, obviously they're all going to come with a financial responsibility. They're going to have a fiscal piece. You know, I'm not in a position to commit funds on behalf of Grand Traverse County or anyone else at this point, but we have acknowledged here tonight that we probably aren't doing quite as good a job as we could be. So how can we make it better? And I think trying to find alternatives to make it better is the first piece. So I'm going to post for the next meeting of this ad hoc committee to be on the 15th at 5:30. Probably, because I would suspect we will see some presentations. If we can maybe do that in a larger facility, you know, I don't know whether chambers would be available if someone wants to do a PowerPoint presentation. If we can arrange for that, we will, because I'd really like to see some real firm proposals about this is how we do it better. Okay. All right, so let's move to the second piece of tonight. We're going to talk about a jail consultant. The Board of Commissioners had mentioned the fact that, you know, if we are going to move forward with the construction of a new jail, we're going to need a jail consultant. None of us have the expertise to do that. Captain Ritter has contacted the National Institute of Corrections, and they have sent us a boilerplate type RFP to hire a project manager. In my conversations with Captain Ritter and with others throughout the community, at least in my opinion, we don't have to recreate the entire wheel. You know, we spend a lot of time dealing with jail and what our capacity needs are. And so Todd, do you want to speak to this a little bit, Todd?
Yeah, so based on the commissioner's direction, I got a boilerplate RFP from NIC. I've gone through and kind of tailored it to Grand Traverse County. The scope of the work outlaid in the proposal is for the purpose of soliciting a contractor in construction for new facility, as well as updating the needs assessment from 2014 forward, and assisting in the, as part of that needs assessment, determining with the CJC, our Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, the overall type of system or type of design we are going to need based on the population and the needs assessment. So it's very specific to updating the needs assessment and helping design and solicit contractors and vendors for construction of the new facility.
What do you think about length of term of the contract?
For the RFP?
Yeah,
It was left at, as far as project management, at the discretion of the county board.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I think-
no
I think
defined
we will all
timeframe.
recognize that a normal jail project is 3 to 5 years. At least in my mind, we don't have to spend a great deal of time deciding that, yes, we in fact need a new jail. We have assessed and we have needs assessments that tell us what the capacity of that jail needs to be. You know, in 2004, it was deemed that we needed 250 to 300 beds by 2020. If we were to break ground today, we won't have 250 or 300 beds by 2020. So whether the new needs assessment establishes that the number today is 300 or whether it's 320 beds, I think we can all acknowledge that we definitely need a new jail, and it needs to be significantly larger than what it is. One piece, you know, having been through this before, one piece that takes a great deal of time is siting the jail. You know, Grand Traverse County, many years ago, saw fit to purchase the property on Rainier for the purpose of centralizing the county government services. The Department of Public Works is there, Veterans Affairs is there, Construction Code is there, the Health Department is there, Emergency Management is there. And when the Health Department building was built, a new 12-inch water main was installed so as that we could facilitate a new jail and Sheriff's Department to be there. We can run around and look at other sites, but the bottom line, at least in my mind, is we bought this property for that purpose. So we don't need to spend 6 or 8 months deciding if that's the right place to put it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's centrally located. It's just outside of the city. The city police are, and they have to get on board about whether or not they can transport prisoners outside of the city. But you know, this is a location that the county board saw fit to purchase for that purpose. And I think we just simply move forward with that. The rest of this is very good. I think we can move forward with this. I'm going to present a copy of this draft to the Board of Commissioners at their meeting tomorrow night, and just kind of talk a little bit about what we did tonight. If you're available to attend that meeting, it would be good.
Yep.
And then we will move forward with, you know, finalizing the draft. Dean Bott, our finance director, is here. Dean can speak to it if he wants to tonight, or he will speak to it tomorrow night. We've talked about how to fund the jail. We have alternatives. There's a lot of different ways. You know, nobody wants to necessarily go out and put a millage on a ballot to build a jail. You know, I remember one of the discussions that we had was, in some event or another, was the fact that we spend 85 to 90% of our money managing 3 to 5% of our population. It's just the way it is. Between the sheriff's office, the prosecutor, the courts, and the jail, we spend 85% of our budget managing 3 to 5% of our population.
You know, I guess my big recommendation as far as this and moving forward and making recommendations from the ad hoc committee would be, if it is determined that the new facility is what we're going to do, the first component should be, before we really go any further, is to establish how the facility can be paid for. Because if we start running down the road with getting a project management team rolling, getting things figured out, updating our needs assessment, and then get to the stumbling block of, well, now we're not going to fund it or be able to fund
And
it.
I think we're just, for general conversation for the people that are in here, we're looking at $25 to $30 million minimum. You know, it's what it's going to cost to get it done.
Before we finalize on our side, I'm open to looking at our 2 parking lots on Boardman and on Washington Street to see if it's at all possible. Because I would like to also lead the consultant along this path to include offices for the prosecutor, the criminal court, the sheriff's department, and the jail, all together if possible.
If a new secure facility is built, whether it be on this site, which, you know, we've beat this site to death 1,000,000 times and we just can't figure out how it fits here. But when a new secure facility is built, it will house more than just the jail.
Those seem to be the the four things I mentioned seem to be valid components to a.
Central dispatch is the other facility that we really need to address.
So 5 things.
Is the proposal directly from the National Institute of Corrections, or was it one of the consultants that worked for them?
This was what the National Institute of Corrections does is they take RFPs from agencies all over the country. They go through them, they keep the ones they like to use as examples for other agencies. So this one was actually from an agency in California.
Okay, so it's not from the same individual that after the 2014 assessment gave you a proposal to do a needs assessment?
No.
And is the needs assessment going to assess the current existing jail and the deficiencies that Mr. Wheelock on a few occasions has said publicly in public meetings is deplorable? Is the needs assessment going to address that? Because there's going to be 5 to 6 years before new jail is even going to be completed if you start tomorrow. What is going to be done as far as the needs assessment with the current conditions in the jail?
Well, that's a pretty broad spectrum. We had the needs assessment from 2014. A lot of what they talk about in the 2014 needs assessment are the limitations based on facility design and the age of the facility and the wear and tear of the facility. Those things that are in that assessment are small dollar or overnight fixes. I think that's why we're talking about a new facility, because that is essentially what the needs assessment basically says, is there are a lot of things in the facility we just cannot overcome based on facility design or limitations with what the
And
facility has
it's
to
not
offer.
just financial, it's physical.
Yeah.
It's just-
But that wasn't a needs assessment, it was just a report that they did with a PowerPoint, and they suggested that you create a criminal justice coordinating committee to come up with a needs assessment back in 2014. And in their PowerPoint and in their written report, they indicated that in the current facility, you're over-reliant on security cameras, and that basically every inch of your jail is the opposite of suicide resistant. And that's why I'm wondering what you're going to do to curtail or correct those deficiencies and deplorable conditions, as Mr. Wheelock has cited on several occasions. What's going to be done for the current facility in all this process?
We're in the process of doing that, okay? We're trying to address people who need mental health care, okay?
But what about the features that are opposite of suicide resistant,
Okay.
that are
Well,
throughout your
we're not gonna-
facility?
We're not gonna make any comments on that, okay?
Okay.
What we've spoken in public is, we're looking to take care of people who may commit suicide.
One of our most critical needs in the jail
And
is to
it's
evaluate the mental health
mental health
conditions in our jail. And that's what this committee is, that's the first piece, and that's what we spent the first, well over an hour discussing, or about an hour tonight discussing. So-
But the needs assessment is not going to address at all the current facility, is that my understanding?
Well, no, the needs assessment will take in not only the current facility, but the criminal justice system as a whole. I mean, it encompasses everything in the needs assessment.
But the needs assessment of the current facility, the assessment of the current facility is not to correct the current facility, or is it to just find justification to build a new facility? Is it to change or alter any of the features of the current facility? Is that going to be encompassed in the needs assessment?
I don't
Again,
think
we're
any of
getting
us have the answer to
down
that
that
question.
road.
Yeah, can I make a comment
Yes, sir.
on that, if you don't mind? That is for the other committee. That is
Oh.
for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee. And they have a very different charge than this committee does.
Okay.
This committee's supposed to work on the mental health issues in the jail first, and then if the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee comes up with that we need a new jail, then the task of this ad hoc is to figure out how to do that. So that they are separate things, and a lot of your questions will go to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee separately.
But this committee is going to make a recommendation on a proposal for a needs assessment to the criminal justice court?
No,
Okay.
they're not working with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee at the moment. They're completely separate charges, that they are different committees. At one point, they will come together in the future to work towards something, but right now, they have completely different charges and completely different things they're supposed to be working on.
So what is the proposal that you're considering right now?
This is an RFP for a project manager.
Project manager of a,
To build a new jail.
To design
Oh,
and build
okay.
a new jail.
Yeah.
okay, it's not for a
Not
needs
to design.
assessment, not a needs assessment? Okay.
All right, is there any other comment this evening? Well, I think we've had a good discussion. I think we've established, we still have a lot of needs. And let's see if we can put our heads together and find ways to get on. Maybe a comment?
Can make sure that we have to invite a CCS rep, CCS training records. We're gonna have proposals on how to improve the mental health services in the jail, in chambers, in case of rehabilitation.
Right.
We'll have to invite Dr. Conlon, and we're gonna work with CMH in the long run here to vet out some discussions on possibilities.
All right.
Do we want to have anyone from prosecutor's office?
Prosecutor is going to be part of the criminal committee, justice
Okay.
coordinating committee. And to be honest with you, Judge Power would normally be part of that. I asked him here this evening because of the fact that he's been through this block a couple times with us, so he could help me. I'm senile in my old age, but I remember stuff as well as I could. So, it's kind of nice to reaffirm that, yeah, we went around this. We looked at a number of different options.
Do we know when the CJCC will start to meet, or?
I don't have an answer to that question. We're going to come back together on May 15th at 5:30 in Chambers, and we're going to talk about how to improve mental health services in the Grand Traverse County Jail. And that probably, unless we finalize the RFP, but I don't think we're going to be ready to finalize the RFP unless we've identified funding and all of those kind of things for the new jail. So,
Can we try to time what we're asking the Correct Care Solutions to do with what Carl might be able to find out from CMH?
I think we'll see presentations at our meeting on the 15th from 3 different organizations. I think we'll see from CCS, from Community Mental Health, and from Dr. Conlon. That's kind of what I expected to see.